Hello Tech Pros, episode 234. Welcome to the podcast where every day of the week we publish another conversation exploring the anxieties, challenges, and opportunities that technical professionals and entrepreneurs face when building their career, building their products, and building their business. There are a lot of shows that focus on the nuts and bolts of technology, but this podcast is not one of them. This is about the people behind the tech industry and the mindsets and skill sets they developed that led to their success. You can learn more about this podcast and our guests at hellotechpros.com, and I invite you to read my personal story of overcoming social anxiety at anxietynerd.com. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to be here this Wednesday to talk to you about the second dysfunction of a software development team. So this is part 2 in our 5-part series, the 5 Dysfunctions of a Software Development Team. And this whole series is modeled after the book, inspired by the book by Patrick Lencioni, called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a wonderful book, regardless of what position you're in the company. I highly recommend it, especially for anyone who's just starting to get into leadership or who has a team, even if you're not completely dysfunctional, even if you have a highly engaging, very committed, very awesome team. You know, I highly recommend this to anyone because it will allow you to see maybe some of the things that can attribute to pain points in a team and some of the things that hold a team back. Some of the things are intentional, some of the things are not intentional, but it's really about getting into the psyche of the individuals on the team and building that trust and so forth. So this is part 2 in that 5-part series. Part 1 was last Wednesday. So if you go back to, tell you what, if you go to hellotechpros.com/team, I just decided, just as I'm recording this, I decided I'll stitch the whole series together in in email format where I will send you an email with all 5 of the episodes back to back, as well as some of my thoughts on leadership for software development teams. So don't worry about the episode number. Just go to hellotechpros.com/team and you'll get last week's episode, this week's episode, and on throughout the next 3 episodes in this series. The 5 Dysfunctions in a Software Development Team. So we're specifically talking about software development and why. I mean, you know, some of you guys have pointed out, you know what, I am in infrastructure, I am in engineering, I am in things other than software development. And I love the show, Chad, but you tend to talk a lot about dev stuff. Come on, help a brother out and talk on some of these other topics. Well, the truth is that the principles behind this material that I'm going to be covering, I think really applies across the board, right? It's really applies to everyone in technology, many fields outside of technology and tech startups. But my background is from software development, and so that's where my heart lies, that's where my experience lies, and that's a position where I can speak from experience and I can speak from knowledge, right? So I believe that it can apply to a lot of other job roles, a lot of other teams, and a lot of other industries. I would love your feedback. So hit me back, Chad at hellotechpros.com, or sign up at hellotechpros.com/team. Send me some feedback on whether or not this material is applicable to your team. So on last week's episode, we talked about the first dysfunction of a software development team. And in my opinion, that is cowboy coding and why that is so bad. Truth be told, I had been a cowboy coder my entire life. One of my buddies on Facebook said, Chad, this negates everything that we did back at a prior job. And I said, dude, honestly, this negates everything that I've ever worked on ever. Every line of code that I've ever worked on has probably been from a perspective of a cowboy coder. And there's just no excuse for that. What I mean by that is, tell you what, tune into that other episode and I'll tell you all about it in great detail on why I screwed up as a cowboy coder. And then once I moved into management, once I moved into a leadership position, once I started trying to build highly dynamic, fast, agile teams together, why the cowboy coder, while good at heart, you know, they have great intentions most of the time. They're not trying to destroy everything. They're just trying to get things done. And why that cowboy coder mentality can actually break down the system of the team. So go check that episode out at hellotechpros.com/team. This episode on dysfunction number 2. So in Patrick Lencioni's book, his first dysfunction was the absence of trust, which I covered in last week's episode, Cowboy Coding. This episode in his dysfunction number 2, the second dysfunction that he covers in his book, is the fear of conflict, or seeking artificial harmony over constructive, passionate debate. And in the book, Patrick, the whole book is not like a textbook. It's more of what you call a fable, right? So he has this fictional team, this fictional people with these fictional problems, but they're based off of teams that, people have worked in real life. Kind of like a Dilbert cartoon, but without the cartoony feel. It's just more of like a novel or novella, right? Where this team gets together, the CEO, the new leader discovers all the problems that are going on, and they start addressing them one at a time. So in the second part, the fear of conflict, seeking artificial harmony over constructive, passionate debate, and Patrick calls out that, sometimes we have really, really nice people that don't want to cause problems, that don't want to rock the boat, that don't want to piss each other off, that don't want to cause conflict, and how that can be extremely detrimental to the productivity of the team, to the success of the team. Because if you're not pushing each other, if you're not really arguing your points and getting into the nuts and bolts and details of why you're so passionate about this thing, then everything can just be kind of wishy-washy and a little bit like not as good as it could be. So I wanted to address this specifically from the aspect of the technical professionals, specifically from the aspect of the software development teams that I have been on. And again, this goes back to a lot of the things that I have failed at as an individual contributor on the team and as a leader on the team. And so I'm going to bring it back to social anxieties. Now, if you've been a member of this podcast for a long time, if you've been subscribing to this podcast, if you listen to other episodes, you have heard me talk multiple times about my struggles with social anxiety, specifically social anxiety disorder, and all the major things that it's caused to happen in my life, both good and bad, but a lot of struggles that I've had to overcome in my personal life and my career and starting my business with social anxieties. Now, don't think that when I say in this context, in today's episode, when I'm saying social anxieties, don't fear that I'm talking about social anxiety disorder, meaning people that have, a really neurological disorder, a psychological disorder about everything going on in their life. I feel that you can have social anxieties, meaning just anxious anxieties in certain social situations without necessarily being so overblown that it wrecks a lot of things in your life and causes you lots and lots of problems. So in this context, what I'm talking about is just that fear of conflict, right? Going back to what Patrick Lencioni was saying in his book, that fear of conflict can absolutely wreck a software development team because you know what? We are just trying to build the software. We're just trying to do the technical things. We're just trying to understand the data and to solve the algorithms and to, build the products. So many of us got into technology. We got into software development because software's fun. Code is fun. Technology is fun. Those problems are like a little puzzle. And you can break that puzzle down into 1,000 pieces. You can rearrange it. You can assemble it. And at the end of the day, there's a right and wrong answer, or probably multiple right and multiple wrong answers to solve that puzzle and to get that technology to work the way that you had intended or to solve that problem, that goal in business. However, when we're dealing with people, for some of us, it can get a little bit uncomfortable or a lot uncomfortable because we don't want to piss people off. We don't want to anger people. We don't want to cause that conflict because anytime we see people frustrated, we see people angry or mad or just, I don't know, defensive, that causes an emotional response in us. And at the end of the day, sometimes we just want to be like Spock. We want to be like Commander Spock, where we devoid ourselves of all emotion and we just logically look at the problem, and we logically break down the code, and we logically look at the data, and we logically try to solve this problem via logic. And when we get human emotions involved, man, it just ruins everything. It ruins all the logic, and it gets in the way of the logic, because those human emotions, no matter how good the logic is, when those human emotions get involved, it can blow everything up, and it can ruin everything in our minds, right? In our minds, some of us, it's like, oh my gosh, if this person would just calm down, if they would just not be upset, then we could solve this logically. I guarantee you that in many cases, that same person on the other end is saying the same thing about you, and they're saying the same thing about me. If Chad would just not get so frustrated and not get so mad, or not get so excited and not get so, happy about his awesome new code that he's writing, then he would see logically that we have this other issue, right? So, the social anxieties I feel are caused from this fear of conflict, this fear of judgment that the other party on the other side is not going to listen to us, that they're not going to accept us, that they're not going to accept our position, right? They're not going to accept our experience and all of our expertise and all of our education and everything that we know about this topic. They are not accepting that. They're picking on us. They are just trying to ram their agenda down our throats. And when we have this fear of conflict, this fear of judgment, it can oftentimes lead to people kind of just rolling over and accepting things at face value, especially in situations where we have a more senior person or a lead or an architect who has a position, a public position that he or she has stated and said, I believe XYZ. And as soon as they say that, man, it can be absolutely detrimental to the team for a lead, in some cases, for some personalities, to make a position known. Because as soon as that position is known, there are so many people in the organization that will just roll over, and they will just show their bellies and be vulnerable and say, okay, well, you're the alpha dog here. We will do whatever you want us to do. But they know that there is another way. They suspect that there is another way. They have data and proof to show that there is a better way to solve this problem. But because of that fear of conflict, because of that fear of judgment, because of that imposter syndrome that we have on ourselves, and we say, I'm not good enough. I'm not a lead. I'm not an enterprise architect. I'm just a software developer. What do I know? Nobody's going to listen to me. Because we have these things, and because we have seen other people in the past argue with this architect and lose time and time and time again, we figure there's no point. There's absolutely no point. This person is just unreasonable. They're unreasonable. They won't talk. They won't discuss. They're just going to argue their point. They're going to bully me. They're going to put me in my place. And I know who I am. I'm just a lowly software developer. I mean nothing to the overall organization. I'm saying that because this is guys, this is what I felt for a long time in my career. And so my social anxieties, my personal, and not, again, this is not diving into the big realm of social anxiety disorder. This is just my anxiety of conflict at work, and my anxiety of, I don't want to be in the middle of a flame war. I don't want to start a flame war. I don't want to rock the boat in the organization. I don't want to get the rest of the leaders to kind of turn their eyes onto us and be like, what's going on here? Why can't you people solve this problem? If I would just say, you know what, his point's valid. Okay, he's probably right. He's got more experience than I do. He's got more security experience than I do. He has more infrastructure experience than I do. I'm just gonna let it go, right? Even though I have customers specifically asking for this feature, even though I have been to conferences and see demos that this person has probably never seen before or heard before. Right? Maybe I have a different way to solve things than he has ever heard or thought about before. Maybe I just have a different way to explain things than nobody else has explained to him in the past, right? Maybe it's a different time in our organization. It's a different time in the industry. Different things have happened. There are different priorities now. This is the right time to speak my mind, speak my message. But in the past, you know what? I have just rolled over and I've said, this enterprise architect, they're never going to listen to me. I'm never going to get my way. So I might as well just sit here and keep my mouth shut. And I have been a leader at the table, like in a conference room, right? Having a meeting with a bigger, broader team saying, the team saying we need to do X or Y. And I go, I disagree. I think this. And I've seen the entire meeting shut down, absolutely shut down. And people start just kind of like fiddling with their phones, looking around, because at that point in the career, I was the leader, I was the boss, I was the manager sitting there at the table, putting my position out there and saying, I believe XYZ. Now, my belief at that time, honestly, purely honestly, it was just a belief. It was just a preference. It was just a point of view based off of my history and my experience. But I guarantee you that there was if there was 10 people in there, there was at least 6 of them that knew a lot more about the situation than I did. Every single time when I was the leader, there were more people who knew more about the situation than I did. They had more facts because they were down there in the trenches. They were writing the code. They were talking to the end users. They were working with the project managers and the DBAs. They knew a lot more about the situation than I did. When they brought it up, if I just off the cuff said, you know what, I believe XYZ, then there were a great number of people, unfortunately, a great number of people that would just kind of roll over, show their bellies, and just go on. Be like, okay, well, Chad thinks this. And maybe they thought I was a jerk for saying that. Maybe they thought, okay, well, I don't want to go up against Chad. Maybe they thought, I don't want to risk my career or risk my, rapport with Chad because I'm stating something counter to him. I don't know what the position was. I know what I was thinking in the past. In the past, I was thinking when I was in that position of this leader, this boss, this architect, this whoever stated their position, it was counter to mine. I don't want to be the lone person in the meeting to speak up against this individual. This individual has power. They are incredibly smart, incredibly intelligent. They have the weight of a lot of people behind them. And as soon as they start saying anything in any room, as soon as they start talking, I see heads start nodding around the room. And in certain circumstances, that's because, what that person's saying is right on and they're absolutely correct, like 90% of the time. But in that 10% case, when I feel strongly differently about it, and I see other people nodding and they're saying, yeah, preach it, brother. Absolutely. Yep. When I see those head nods, there's that fear inside of me that rises up and says, I can't speak out against that person because if I speak out against that person, I'm speaking out against that other person and this girl and that guy and this girl and that guy. And there's like 10 other people in the room that I would be speaking out against. I am a lone wolf here. And who am I to raise my voice? And when I say raise my voice, I don't mean get loud, get belligerent, right? What I mean is just share my voice. Who am I to share my voice, to share my ideas that is counter to the rest of the organization, that is counter to all of the great minds here in this room and all of the great leaders or technical professionals here in this room? I would be going out on a limb. I would be alone. I would have everybody looking at me and thinking I'm a complete idiot for saying this stuff. First of all, because they don't believe it, because otherwise if they believed it, they would not be shaking their head and nodding their head along with this other individual. Second of all, that they are on that team, right? Team architect, not on team Chad. So there's a lot of anxieties that I had. And then as a leader, when I say those things and all of a sudden I see people, some of the people just head nodding, and I realize that, they're just head nodding. They have no idea why I'm saying this. They're just head nodding. Why are they head nodding? To go along with me. Other folks stop their head nodding when they disagree, but they don't disagree. They don't verbally speak out, or they don't say, excuse me, like, I think maybe there's a perspective that you haven't thought about before. Because there's so many people, regardless of where you came from, everybody at one point or another struggles with this fear of judgment, this fear of conflict, this fear of, you know what, I have seen it in the past where somebody presents some countering logic, some countering information, and it just goes bad. I don't want that to happen to me. So I'll tell you what, in just a moment, I want to talk about what we can do instead, what we can do as leaders, what we can do as individuals to get past some of the social anxieties and bring new ideas to the table and get really to the heart of the matter, regardless of what that matter is. We'll talk about it in just a minute, but first we'll take a quick break and thank our sponsors. Is your website ugly? I mean, really ugly? Did your website fall out of the ugly source code repo and hit every branch on the way down? Is your website so ugly that Apple won't display it in Safari due to their human interface guidelines? Is your website so ugly that your CSS has no style? Is your website so ugly that even your mama won't bookmark it? I know a lot about ugly websites because, sadly, I've been building them my entire career. I've always made excuses like, it should be the functionality over the design. But what I should have been saying all along is, look, I'm colorblind, I'm style challenged, and I have no business building web front ends whatsoever. Luckily, I've worked with some amazing designers that have helped turn my MVP OS, or minimum viable piece of into websites that real humans want to use. And it's not just about complementary colors and rad logo designs. It's about connecting with your website visitors on an emotional level that engages the stickiness centers in their brain and makes them more curious to read about your products and then follow your call to actions. I invite you to check out the awesome tips that website designer Veronica Curran gave me for the Hello Tech Pros website and get your free personalized website makeover consultation video by visiting hellougly.site.com. Hello Ugly Site is definitely ugly, but your website doesn't have to be. Go to hellougly.site.com. That's hellougly.site.com. Since publishing episode 141 on how social anxiety disorder and depression nearly cost me my life, I've gotten tons of feedback from people who are struggling with similar issues. Anxiety is a big deal. In my opinion, it's not discussed enough, especially in the tech industry where a lot of us hide from our anxieties behind the computer screen instead of learning how to address them. That's why I started writing a book on the subject. If you are struggling with anxiety or know someone who is, please visit anxietynerd.com. You can sign up to read Chapter 1 for free as well as receive regular progress details so that you can hold me accountable to get this book published. anxietynerd.com. Okay, we're back with the second dysfunction of a software development team. And this whole series is based off the book by Patrick Lencioni, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Highly recommend that book. Come to my website at hellotechpros.com/team to get access to all 5 episodes about my perspective on the 5 dysfunctions of a software development team, as well as links to get Patrick's book on audio and book format. So in this episode, we've been talking about the second dysfunction of a software development team, which is those social anxieties, that fear of conflict, that fear of rocking the boat. That, hey, we don't want to start a flame war. We don't want to piss off senior management. We don't want to disagree with the architect, right? We don't want to be seen as the lone wolf trying to go in a different direction than what the organization is going. So instead, we kind of sit there and keep our mouths shut and be quiet, and then we leave the room, we leave the meeting, we leave the thread, and we grumble amongst ourselves, right? We bitch and complain and moan, and it's just like, so frustrating because we want to share our ideas. We want this person to see our perspective. We want the organization to, grow from our experience and knowledge and ideas, but things are not going that direction because we keep it to ourselves. And when we keep it to ourselves, at the end of the day, it's bad. It's bad for everybody. We need to get it out there. And I want to let you know that there are healthy ways to do it. There are healthy ways to present that information, to present that idea that doesn't start a flame war, that doesn't necessarily rock the boat and doesn't cause judgment or conflict. Now, Actually, I'm gonna reverse that a little bit. I'm gonna reverse what I just said. I'm gonna negate what I just said because I discovered that I really like conflict in the office because I feel that conflict is very healthy. Now, when I say that, what I mean is I want us to really have conflicting ideas. I want us to really share our conflicting viewpoints. It is absolutely extremely valuable and extremely healthy to have conflicted discussions about a situation. Should we go left or should we go right? Should we adopt platform A or platform B? Should we use proprietary software or open source software? Should we take the old like legacy system and just kind of fix it and patch it one more time, or should we completely refactor it from the ground up? Right? These points, there are pros and cons on each side. No matter what discussion that you're having, no matter what decision needs to happen, there are pros and cons on each side. And I think sometimes we kind of water down the pros, we kind of water down the cons, and we just take it at top level, surface level of what's the biggest pro or the worst con, right? And just look at it from that level. What I really, really appreciate from the teams that I work with is let's go through all of them, and let's go through all of them passionately, absolutely passionately, because maybe on my list, that con for that thing is really, really low on the list. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, yeah, it doesn't do all those things. It's just a bell and whistle. Who cares? We don't need that. But maybe there's another perspective on the team that can say, look, Chad, that con of this, it doesn't have this attribute. It doesn't have this feature. That's a really, really big deal because did you know the whole industry is shifting towards that? Did you know that we're not going to be doing these other mainstream things anymore? Look at all these blogs, look at all these podcasts, look at all these books that have been written. Look at all the industry experts in the conferences. They're all moving to this direction. We have to drop the old way, right? The old way, it doesn't matter. That pro that you're fighting for is not worth as much today as it was worth 5 years ago, back when you were writing code. This other thing is a very big pro for this other side, this other API, this other function, this other tool, whatever it is. It's a very big deal because of the changes that have happened, right? And every person has a different perspective. There's one person that's going to be very security conscious, right? And they're going to know security inside and out. There's going to be another person who is extremely data conscious, and they're going to know about best ways to store data and best ways to search data, right? There's going to be another person that's more like the speed perspective. How fast is it? Another person that's just user experience, and they don't care what it does. If the end users don't like it, if the end users aren't going to be excited about it, and we have to sell them, if we have to pitch them on it, if we have to force it, ram it down their throat, then this person's going to be all against it. And what I'm saying throughout this whole thing is it takes all of those perspectives to get the right decision, to get the best decision. And if any one of those perspectives is not being presented or is not being presented wholeheartedly and excitedly to discuss and to create that conflict about their perspective, then the whole team's going to suffer. The whole product's going to suffer. The whole company's going to suffer because you're not getting all of those perspectives out on the table. Now, when I say the conflict, what I don't mean is to pick on people as individuals, right? I don't mean making it personal. Oh, you're just saying that because you think you know it all. You're just saying that because you love Microsoft. You're a Microsoft fanboy. That's why you say that. No, I'm not saying we don't pick on people. We don't pick on people because of their past experience. We don't pick on people because of their prejudices or because of their perceived prejudices, because we think they are Microsoft fanboys, right? We can, from a perspective of trust, from a perspective of openness, this is my fears, this is my thoughts, this is my experience, this is my hopes and desires, this is what I want to get out of it. And I feel like maybe you are not seeing my perspective, right? And we need to have a lot of healthy debate on these areas. We need to have leaders there who are impartial as possible. And it's, in my opinion, it is the job of the leader to not make a decision, but to really foster a great working collaborative environment where people can absolutely passionately share and discuss their pros and cons about a situation, and absolutely passionately create a lot of healthy conflict about the data, conflict about the evolution, conflict about the future of what this thing is, but to do so in a spirit of really love. We don't say that in business, but from my perspective, we have to have love for each other as human beings, and not just try to be completely Spock about it. We have to be empathetic to one another. We have to encourage one another. We have to say, look, I know that you have a difference of opinion here, and I know that my opinion right now is different from yours. And I honestly want to fight for my position because I truly, truly believe in it. But I also want you to fight for your position as well. Because if you are right and I am wrong, I'm going to feel horrible a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 6 weeks from now, whatever the time period is, once we find out that I was wrong. See, we don't know until we know. But if you have a perspective that I'm not aware of or I'm not listening to, please share it with me. I want to hear it. We have to hear it. We have to engage in this discussion in order to get everybody's knowledge together, right? We want to live like a beehive. We want to have that hive mind where all the ideas are shared. And we can't do that effectively if we're afraid of that judgment, if we're afraid of that conflict. So embrace the conflict. Don't hide from it. Don't shy from it. Don't keep your mouth shut. Embrace that conflict and challenge each other. Challenge your leaders. Challenge your coworkers, your colleagues, your customers. Challenge everyone to bring that conflict to the table. And for good, bad, or indifferent, like lay it all out. Hashtag no sugar, baby. No sugar. Hashtag the truth hurts, but get it out there. It is therapeutic and it will be good for you. Again, do it from a spirit of love. Hey, we're all human beings. We all care about this place. We all care about this product. We want it to be better, and we can only get it to the best of the best of the best if we all 100% have that vulnerability and put our ideas out there and put our thoughts out there and have a little bit of conflict. A little bit of conflict is good. It is a good thing. I love it now. I love having conflict over things because it pushes us to the next level. And anytime I've been in a conflicting situation, sometimes, well, every single time, I have learned something about the other person. I have learned something about the technology that I didn't know before. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether we pick mine, we pick yours. What matters is that we get the best possible outcome, the best possible scenario. And that we can only have if we cuss and discuss, as I like to say. All right, so tune in next week or go to hellotechpros.com/team to get access to all 5 episodes of the 5 Dysfunctions of a Software Development Team. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/234. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Leadership Wednesday, but tomorrow, my featured guest and I talk about technology. On Friday, people and communication. Saturday, entrepreneurship. Sunday, being unplugged. And then next week, we kick it off with Motivation Monday, followed by Tuesday, productivity. And then we're back again on Wednesday to discuss leadership. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.